control room, and when the teletype machine came on, you know, it sounded like somebody thumping across the floor. And I had a shotgun across my lap, and I would jump up, and I was ready to go.
You were asleep?
Well, not quite. Sometimes, maybe, but yeah, that was and then I worked for 15 years carrying audio equipment to remote broadcasts, so the engineer could step up like this and just take over and read or do whatever, while I was in the background sweating and carrying equipment. And I thought, someday...
You paid your dues.
Yes, someday I'm going to be the person they're going to carry equipment for. I never was. Because
what a
when I became an announcer, they went combo, it was called, combination engineer announcer. So I carried my equipment and talked at the same time.
Oh, wow.
First morning on the air, what was it? What were you doing?
I was doing the early morning show. I was asked, since I had been the engineer on that show for 15 years, I was asked to, Everett, you might as well take over while I'm on vacation, said the program director, because you know the procedure and everything, go ahead. And so I did, and he came back from vacation. He says, good enough, you're on, you're the morning guy.
Were you scared your first morning on?
Well, no, no.
You were over it by that point.
Oh, yes.
Marianne, tell us your story. How'd you break in?
Well, I started junior high. I had my own little program on Saturday.
Girl Talk or something.
Yeah, well, it was girls, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was on WWVA in Wheeling, West Virginia. And I think I was in the 8th grade. And it was Calling All Girls. And it was just a little short segment that I did on things that the girls my age would be interested in, like fashions and places to go and what to do and so forth and so on. And I loved it. It was just wonderful. Then in high school, of course, I was in plays, and college, I was in plays, and I belonged to little theaters, and I was always kind of a ham, really. But I went to a teacher's college. That's all I could afford. It was very close to home. And when I graduated, I became a teacher, and I was a teacher for 18 years. And I just had a wonderful opportunity to get into television. I went for an audition in Dayton. It was WDTV.
DTV.
WDTN TV. And I was hired, and I did a special program in the morning, and I was on the newscast, and I was there for a year. But I had to commute every weekend back and forth. And of course, my son was only 9 years old. My husband was wonderful. He took care of everything while I was gone. It was getting to be not too good. And I thought, I can't, I loved it. But my family was first. So I went back to teaching in Marion City Schools. But then I still had this yearning, for television. And so I got an appointment with the news director in WCMH. It was called WCLC when I was there. And
WLWC.
WLWC, right. It was the Avco broadcasting system.
They had 5 stations.
They had 5 stations. Cincinnati, right, and
Dayton.
Right. Yeah, and I was there. And I was there for about 6 years. And I was wooed to WMRN by George Oakham and John Courtwright. And I was there for about 6 years. And when they were selling the radio station, I decided I wanted to go back to teaching, and I ended up retiring with 30 years of teaching and 14 years of broadcasting.
But you're back today.
I'm back today.
You're back today.
Well, yes, kind of, I guess.
Well, I hope so. Fritz, tell us your story.
Well, I grew up, as I mentioned, in the 40s when we used to listen to radio was a major form of entertainment, and we had shows like Sam Spade and Michael Sheen and Charlie McCarthy and Edgar Bergen and Jack Benny, and there were mysteries and dramas and comedies and musical shows. And radio was the second, movies probably topped radio in audience, and then radio was probably second. So the voice changed early on, and formula had not hit radio yet, and so I thought, hey, I've got the voice, I could be a radio actor, which was quite valid in those days, quite viable. And so When I went to Ohio State, well, I mean, I did the theater in high school and all of that to get a little bit of presence. And then I went to Ohio State and I majored in radio, TV, theater. Ohio State at that time, 52 through 57, was a very good performance school in that we had radio announcing was, they had 3 5-hour courses, 15 hours totally, just in radio announcing. And we would also do performing, like we would put on shows. We got a script from Sam Spade, and we would cast it, and we would do radio shows. But we'd have like an hour a day, 5 days a week, of where we would go in, and there would just be a big book of commercials and news and music intros. And we, for an hour a day, class of maybe 15 people, we'd sit there and take turns reading commercials, and the guy would say, you punch this up, you back off on this, a little harder here. And so I learned there. Then I went to the Army. After I graduated, I got my Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education, English and Speech as my majors. Got drafted, went to the Army, and because I'd been in radio, TV in college and had worked at TV as a floor director, that is behind the scenes, they put me into writing movies, narrating movies, acting in movies for the Army in the old Paramount Studios in New York City. And that was like a master's or a doctorate. I learned so much there that had they guaranteed that I would stay there, I would have re-enlisted for 4 years, but the Army wouldn't do that kind of guarantee. When I got out of the Army, I went around, I made the rounds, auditioned, and they had a catch-22. Everybody said, gee, we love your voice, we love your style, but we won't hire you unless you've had commercial radio experience. And I'd say, well, how do you get some? And they wouldn't count the radio that you did at Ohio State or in school. I said, well, how do you get radio experience, commercial radio experience, if no commercial station will hire you without that experience? And they go, catch-22 early on. But I was working at an ad agency as a writer and an artist, and I had to go to WMNI to pick up a photograph of their sportscaster for a poster I was making. Lex Mayer Chevrolet was sponsoring the OSU basketball games, and Eddie Lane was the MNI sportscaster who was doing. So I went there, and I just happened to get there. The program director is sitting in for the receptionist because it was her break time or something. And I said, I'm here to pick up a picture of Eddie Lane. And he gives it to me. He says, hey, have you ever been on radio? And instantly, the moment of truth hit me square in the eyes. I've never been on radio. Oh, yeah, sure.
There you go.
And he said, well, we're looking for somebody to do the Saturday night sign-off and the Sunday night sign-on, which was essentially babysitting with remote shows because they were a big rock and roll station at the time. And Saturday night they would do a big rock and roll, what do you call it, where the DJ plays records? Record hop.
Yeah.
That's Memorial with their 4 DJs. And so I would just babysit. But if something went wrong, I'd have to say, you're listening to WMNI, your Tower Power, higher top of Southern Hotel. And then on Sunday morning, I had to babysit all of the remote church broadcasts and the live pictures that would come in. And if they would lose the remote, then I would have to do fill-in broadcasting. So they kind of liked the way I did that. So when an opening came up for a DJ shift, they offered it to me. I got it. And then 2 years later, when WMNI went on, or when WBNS FM went on the air live, they said, hey, you've had commercial experience, we like your voice, and they hired me, no audition, nothing.
In the essence of time, we're normally going to have a mailbag question on this show. We're going to have to forego that today. We might continue this conversation tomorrow. It's a very interesting conversation.
Yes, but we need to talk about you.
Well, we need to talk about where the glasses came from, where Buckeye Chuck came from. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. But if you have a mailbag question, anything you want to ask this panel, you can do that by joining us on Facebook under the name Scott Spears, or you can email them to irmcommunication@gmail.com. Now, we want to have a little celebration today on our first episode. Do we have the little celebration ready from the back room in there? Do we have the celebration? Maybe we don't have the celebration ready. We might celebrate tomorrow.
Cue the back room.
Cue the back room. They're not coming. We might have a celebration tomorrow. You know how we're going to end today? Charlie, tell me the story. WMRN, you're hosting the very popular show Tradio. Somebody calls in about a dog. Clean it up for us. Let's go.
Well, we would read or take phone calls like is done, and also read cards. And one card read, I would like to sell a Shih Tzu. and only I mispronounced it a little. And after Tradio was off, no, I think it was still during Tradio, a man called up and said, "Does that dog come with papers?"
On that note, for the first episode of The Exchange, for Fritz the Night Owl, Charlie Evers, Mary Ann Michaels, I'm Scott Spears. See you tomorrow.
So that we should act like we're talking.
I know we're going to something about
I mean, that's.